Welcome back to the Block O Show, here presented by Barrio Tacos on Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio. Alongside Connor Schuh, I'm Caleb Spinner, here to break down a road rivalry matchup between the Ohio State Buckeyes as they head up to Ann Arbor, Michigan to take on the Wolverines on Sunday, February 5th, tomorrow in basketball, men's basketball here. Connor, you will be up there in Michigan for this game here, joining our own Matt Goldman for coverage on Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio. Game starts at 1 o'clock. We'll have from the field, or from the floor, I guess in this case, since it's basketball, not football anymore. That'll be on our Instagram and Twitter pages too, before and after the game. So Connor, you'll be up there. You're going to be my expert on this because I have some questions out here for you. I know you've done hours and hours and hours of game research to become an expert in this game. So I'm looking forward to talking with you here. First off, your general thoughts, right? You come in, this is your first year with Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio, and already you're covering Ohio State, Michigan in a pretty popular sport here in Columbus and in the college sports world.
You know, Caleb, I'm just honored to be able to do this game so early into my broadcasting career. I mean, I haven't even had 30 games under my belt, so I'm very appreciative to be able to come to cover a game like this. So it's awesome.
So let's look at the last time outs for Ohio State and Michigan. You and I were together the first time, or I guess the last time, most recent time the Buckeyes played. It was a loss at home against Wisconsin, 65-60. The Buckeyes fell to 11-11 overall, 3-8 in the Big Ten Conference on the season. They trailed the Badgers by 18 at one point, but then pulled it into a close game, particularly in the latter half of that second half. It's good to see that Ohio State can come back if needed, but the ability to finish has to be there too, right? You get so close to the finish line, you got to be able to cross it, and Ohio State was not able to do that in that game.
Absolutely not, but regardless, I think that second half showed the grit of the team. Even Zed Keys said in the postgame presser that with Chris Holtmann getting ejected and Bryce Sensabaugh getting ejected, not ejected, but fouling out, that is, it really set a fire under the team, and they were able to persevere through that, but not entirely persevere, of course, because they ended up dropping the game by about 5 points in the final seconds. Justice Suing, he almost had it at the end, getting a couple of good looks in the mid-range, but overall, it's a good start for the Buckeyes, but they're going to need to turn this good effort into actual wins because they've only won 2 of their last 10 games, so they're in quite the slump in Big Ten play right now, and they're now ranked as one of the worst teams in the conference, 3-8 in the Big Ten, and going up against a Michigan team who, about a similar record, they're 12-10 on the year, but they just beat a pretty good Northwestern team that Ohio State, they beat themselves earlier in January, but Michigan, they're a force to be reckoned with, especially with guys like Hunter Dickinson and then the freshman Jet Howard on the wing. They're going to be a handful for the Buckeyes.
And you look back at that Wisconsin game, I mean, you talked about it. The Chris Holtmann ejection was big with a minute left in the first half there. Of course, Bryce Sensabaugh fouling out of the game on what I think many people would call a ticky-tack call on his last one there. But, you know, still enough to be called a foul and get him out of the game there. But what I look at it is Ohio State has to be more than, I'll say 2 people in this case, but in general, more than a few people, right? It's obvious that Chris Holtmann is a big part of the team. Duh, he's the head coach. It's obvious that Bryce Sensabaugh is a big part of the team. Duh, he leads in a lot of major categories, which we'll talk about in our players to watch. But great teams aren't one player. Great teams aren't one coach. Great teams have depth, and Ohio State has that. But they allowed themselves, I think, in that game to get so down emotionally, even with the comeback going on, even with Jake Diebler taking over the coaching duties, that they weren't able to get over Holtmann and Sensabaugh not being on the floor with them. And I think that's the biggest challenge for Ohio State is you have to get those events, get those crucial events out of your mindset, especially like Thursday when you're in a position to win the game.
I mean, absolutely. You said it. They run their offense through Bryce Sensabaugh most of the time, and it's led to a lot of isolations. And when Bryce isn't on the floor or he's double teamed, they can't seem to get an offensive flow going. It seems like there's not a lot of plays run from Holtmann or from Diebler all season. It feels like it's been the Bryce Sensabaugh show, which is, granted, it makes sense because he's an incredibly efficient scorer, one of the best freshmen in the country right now, but you would really hope to see guys like Justice Suing and Zed Key, especially leaders on this team, two captains. They've been with the team for a while now, but they've been just a little underwhelming. Zed Key, he was off to a pretty good start this season, especially with his outbursts against Duke, scoring a career high. I think it was 22 points. But ever since then, he's only been averaging about 11 points, and that three ball he flashed at the beginning of the year, it's kind of dissipated. And then same with Suing. It seems like he's just been playing a little gingerly ever since he's come back from that big injury. He only played 2 games last year, of course. And then you have your shooters like Sean McNeil and Bruce Thornton, but they haven't been able to get open very often lately just because of the lack of ball movement on the offensive end of the floor for the Buckeyes. So I don't know. I feel like they just need to move it more often.
Now let's talk about Michigan here. Their opponent, the Wolverines, took care of Northwestern in Evanston 68-51 in their last time on the hardwood. The Wolverines, like you said, similar boat as the Buckeyes, now sitting 12-10, overall 6-5 in the conference, further ahead of that 500 mark after Thursday night. But Hunter Dickinson, of course, you mentioned his name before. Michigan's leading scorer with 19 points in that game, 3 rebounds, 2 assists there. How important is he in a few choice words? Because I know we could go on and on talking about how big he is for them. But in a few choice words here, how important is he for what the Wolverines do on the floor?
Well, he is the leader of the team, clear cut. I mean, he's been with the team for 3 years now, and he's been a focal point of their offense from the entire time. And he is the focal point of the offense now. So the Ohio State defense, their focus is going to be all over him in the paint. And now on the 3-point line, he's added a 3-point shot this year, shooting it at about 38%, not something he was really doing earlier in his career. So he's just an offensive hub for the Wolverines, and Ohio State, they're going to have their hands full with him.
I'm going to rattle off some numbers here, so I apologize for our not math people, and I promise I'm not one myself. So when I mention these numbers here, know that it's for a reason. But the thing that caught me off guard here are the Wolverines and the Wildcats game, and not off guard, but really stood out to me, I'll say. That's a better phrase to put it, was the improvement from the first to second half with shooting. It was unbelievable. The field goal percentage for the Wolverines jumped from 9 of 31, right about 29%, to 15 of 27, 56%. 3-point shooting rose from 3 of 13, 23%, to 4 of 7, 57%, in the second set of 20 minutes. And then also they improved at the charity stripe, going from 5 of 7 in the first half, 71%, to 8 of 9, 89% in the second. So it's one of those things where you're going to play a really tough Michigan team through the first 20 minutes. And then after halftime, they don't get any easier. If anything, they get better as you go through the game.
And I would say we saw a similar thing from the Buckeyes, of course, last night, but didn't result in the same outcome the Wolverines got last night. Of course, that was incredible by Michigan, going on a 12-0 run at one point, and overall a big 18-2 run, which of course set them far apart from Northwestern and got them that 17-point win, which is just huge. And seeing that they're solid already in the first half, but they can just flip a switch out of nowhere in the second half. And one thing I got to say, you have to give it to their bench guys, because Jet Howard, he had a bit of an off night, only 8 points. He's their second leading scorer on the season, averaging about 14 a game. But Joey Baker, the graduate senior transfer from Duke, he dropped a season high 14 points off the bench, and freshman Doug McDaniel, 9 assists off the bench. So they get contributions from everywhere, not just Dickinson, not just Howard, and not just Kobe Buffkin, who had a pretty good game himself, his first career double-double, 15 and 12, and a lot of that damage done in the second half. So Ohio State, they're really going to have to turn up that defense in the second half on Sunday.
Let's talk about our players to watch here. First for Ohio State, for me, it's Bryce Sensabaugh. And I apologize to you for taking the obvious answer there, but I will try to reward you by taking the less obvious option. I did not take Hunter Dickinson for my Michigan one. But Sensabaugh, multiple freshman of the week nods from the Big Ten. He's the team leader in scoring with 383 points total this season, leading the second place margin. Justin Suing with 272. That's a difference of 111 points. I'm really branding myself as the math guy here, and I don't mean to. I think anything beyond basic addition and subtraction is the work of the devil himself. So definitely don't believe that I'm a guy who loves the numbers, but I think when you have so many that Sensabaugh does, team high 47.5%, 3-point percentage, minimum of 20 attempts, calculating that, 92 defensive rebounds, good for second on the team, only 6 behind Zed Key, and there's a decent height difference between those two, especially when you look at the difference of their position here. But I don't mean to use too many numbers because, he passes the eye test as well. But I think these numbers and I think these accolades that Sensabaugh has had go a long ways towards showing in the grand scheme of the team how big he is for Ohio State. But who was your Buckeye to watch?
Well, before we go on, I just wanted to mention one stat for Sensabaugh that has really stuck out to me. He's averaging 18 points a game in only 23 minutes per game. So he goes in there and he just fills it up whenever he's on the court, been incredibly efficient, and of course, very well deserved to be a player, the game candidate against Michigan. But the guy I've had in mind is absolutely Zed Key. He's going to be guarding Hunter Dickinson all game and playing against him offensively too, of course. And it's going to be huge because you mentioned height difference, big height difference. Hunter Dickinson, 7 foot, 7'1". Zed Key, maybe 6'9", on a good day, more like 6'8", but him as your center, you're going to have to run some of your offense through him, and he's going to have to bring his all and try to give Hunter Dickinson everything he has, every post move, every jab, just anything that can get him off his game to get Ohio State a win. So if he plays well, I think they have a good shot at winning this game.
And for the Wolverines, I have Kobe Buffkin, who you talked about earlier, slightly behind Dickinson in a lot of the major categories, but he is still extremely effective for the Michigan Wolverines and what they want to do on the floor. He spends the most time on the floor each game, averaging just about 32 minutes per contest. He's one of the only 3 players to have played and started in each of Michigan's 22 games. He's a top free throw shooter with an 82.7% clip at the charity stripe. One of only 3 Michigan players to average double-digit points with 12.2. I could go on and on talking about Kobe Buffkin, but I'm more interested to see who you picked out as the head candidate for the Wolverines, the head guy to watch in this, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be Hunter Dickinson.
Well, I was thinking about Hunter Dickinson, but what you were saying about your pick, you didn't want to make it obvious, and of course, I really want to pick Hunter Dickinson, especially after what I was saying about Zed Key and his matchup against him, but I want to go a different direction. Jet Howard, freshman, 6'8", 210, shooting guard. He's similar to Bryce Sensabaugh in the sense that they can both score from all 3 levels, and they're both big for their position. Jet Howard, he's going to be able to shoot over almost anyone who's defending him on that wing. Maybe even Bryce Sensabaugh too, who is 6'6", not too much shorter, but Jet Howard, very long, very talented scorer, and his length is going to be huge for Michigan, especially on the defensive end. He might be able to check Bryce Sensabaugh, and if Michigan wants to win this game, they're absolutely going to need him in his 6'8" frame to check Sensabaugh on the defensive end and to get some good shots off on offense, because he's definitely a rising freshman and a great player.
Barrio Tacos is now open right in the heart of Ohio State's campus at 15th Avenue and High Street. Barrio Tacos is serving tacos and margs late night every night and has an incredible happy hour with half off margs and $1 off tacos every weekday from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. And don't forget, Barrio Tacos also accepts Buck ID and is offering to-go and DoorDash delivery options. You can catch the Barrio Tacos taco truck Mondays through Fridays, parked right outside the RPAC as well. Final segment here before we wrap up this conversation on the Block O Show. Keys to the game. I have Ohio State. You got to wipe the slate clean. We talked about it on the broadcast Thursday night on SGSR when we were talking about the Wisconsin game. It's going to be a rough road ahead. It's not impossible to get back in tournament contention. I think right now I remember hearing that Ohio State was one of the final 8 teams out of the tournament right now where people were mocking up and placing them. It's not entirely out of the realm of possibility that you can get back in those good graces. However, you got to pretend like you don't remember anything from the season. Of course, keep the lessons. Of course, if coaches told you that we're going to change this from early in the season, of course, remember that. But you have to play like you have a 0-0 record You cannot let your losses get to you. And then for Michigan, it's defend your home turf. You're 8-3 at home. You're playing against a struggling Ohio State team. You've got to have immense confidence that you can beat. Don't beat yourself. Force Ohio State to beat you. You've got the talent. Let them do all the work. Don't do it for them.
And I couldn't agree more, Caleb. Of course, for Ohio State, after this dire stretch of games they've had, all you can really do is just put it behind you, put the ejection behind you, put the fouling out of Bryce Sensabaugh behind you, but take what good you can get and be motivated by this hole you've dug for yourself. 11-11 right now. The only chance they make the tournament is if they rattle off maybe 8-9 straight wins, and it starts here against Michigan. They have to play good defense, something they haven't really been known for recently, especially against Indiana, giving up 86 against them. So for them, they just have to play their game, keep scoring the ball efficiently, move the ball, and play good defense. And for Michigan, couldn't agree more. It's going to be loud in Ann Arbor. That stadium is going to be packed with Michigan fans, and they're going to have to ride the crowd out all the way and run through their two big players, Hunter Dickinson and Jet Howard. And if they do that, they can pick up a win.
Ohio State Buckeyes at Michigan Wolverines Sunday, February 5th at 1 p.m. Eastern on Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio. Be sure to check out our Scarlet and Gray Sports Radio Twitter and Instagram accounts at SGSR_OSU on Twitter and at SGSR.OSU on Instagram. Before and after the game for our From the Floor segments there. Connor, you'll be in there with Matt Goldman. It's going to be an electric environment. Always is. It could be Ohio State versus Michigan Chess Club, and it would still draw a sold-out crowd. So when you get something as popular as men's basketball is on the campuses of Ohio State here in Columbus and Michigan up in Ann Arbor, you know it's going to be one heck of an atmosphere. So appreciate your time coming on to talk with it for me. Have a great drive up there on Sunday and enjoy the game.
Thank you very much, Caleb. Have a good one.
That'll do it for us here on the Block O Show. For Connor Schuh, I'm Caleb Spinner. We'll see you next time. But for now, that's the show. We're out of here.